everyone, it's Autumn. Today I wanted to do a video about the Mercier Secret Camouflage Concealing Duo. I have the shade SC2 and I just kind of wanted to talk about how I use it. I've touched on this a little bit like in favorites videos and getting ready with me videos, but I thought I would just do a dedicated comprehensive video talking about this in case you were curious about this product. So as you can see, it has a more yellow tinted side and a more peachy tinted side. And I've watched several different makeup artists, from Lisa Eldridge to Goss makeup artists to Monica Blunder, people like that using this, and they all have differing opinions on how you can use it. I find that they're all correct in how you can use it, but they also have opinions saying that some are like, well, it's not good for blemishes, or it's not good for this or that, and they use it a certain way. I find that this is good for all of those things. So some of them believe you cannot use this in the under eye. You know, some believe you can't use it on blemishes. Some believe that you always need to mix the two together and not do them separate. I actually do a combination of everything that they do, and I find that it works awesome. So I did do a demo. I'm going to go ahead and cut to that now, and then when I'm done with the demo, I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more about this product. So as you can see, I have a very sheer base on just because I wanted you to be able to see how this works on the skin. So today, instead of wearing foundation, I just used the Neutrogena Healthy Skin Glow Sheer, which is pretty much just like, it's not even a tinted moisturizer, it's pretty much just like a very sheer, barely tinted sort of base, I guess. So I have that on, and as you can see, these are two different colors, so I'm going to be mixing the colors or using them individually depending on where I place them. So I'm going to start off with the darker area on the inner corner of my eye right here and here, and I'm going to take the peach shade on my ring finger here, get some of that in there, and I really want to warm it up because the texture of this, it's kind of like a waxy, but it comes off kind of thin and pigmented. It's not super creamy, so I really want to warm it up to where it glides onto the skin easily. And then I just take it on those index fingers and I just kind of stamp it right there where I get dark in the inner corner. And since it's kind of like a peachy tint, it really helps to cancel out the blueness that I have there. If you're extra blue after you kind of do like your first thing, you can get some more on your finger again, make sure it's warmed up, and kind of stamp it there. You can just kind of take a brush to kind of buff out the edges of that into the skin to where you leave a concentrated amount of the product right there on it. That was just for the stamp here. Now on the under eye, you're going to want a very, very thin layer of this just because since it is a drier formula and not super creamy. It's great because it can tend to look a little bit dry though, so make sure that you moisturize your eyes very well before using it. And again, just going to kind of stamp it on the under eye area right here, and then kind of bring it out. And then I'm just going to use this to kind of stipple again. And this also helps to pick up any extra product that may be down there that may settle into any fine lines or creases. Okay, so now I'm going to dip into the yellow. That really helps with redness. And I generally have a little bit of redness just around my nose area up into here. And if you kind of like want to brighten up your face a little bit or just anything like that, it's good to kind of put a little bit of yellow here. So just the areas that are red or that I want to brighten up a bit, I am just going to stamp the yellow. And again, it's the same texture as the peach, so you do kind of have to warm it up and work with it a little bit. I'm also going to take it in this area right here in the forehead where I seem to get a little bit red sometimes, to just kind of cancel that out and brighten it up. I'm just going to use this kind of pointed foundation brush to kind of buff around the edges of that once I get it on there. And I'm also going to use that same little pointed foundation brush, and you can just dip directly into this as well. Get a little bit on there, and on my chin's a little bit red. And that will just soften it and make it less red. So now I'm going to use this little pointed eyeliner brush. I think this is by, the fine liner brush by Real Techniques. And I'm going to mix these two shades together to kind of get my skin tone, because my skin isn't this yellow, nor is it this peach, so I kind of mix the two to get my skin tone to kind of cancel out any blemishes or pigmentation that I get on my cheeks. So Just kind of dipping into both of them a little bit and then trying out in the back of my hand. And depending on your skin tone is going to depend on how much you need to dip into each one. So it's going to be different for everyone. But I am just going to kind of pinpoint conceal here. And tap it in. Okay, so that is pretty much my face concealed. The great thing about this product is the fact that since it is kind of, you have to warm it up to work with it, once you get it on the skin, it's not so creamy like a lot of the other products that will just melt right off. So that's actually a good thing that this is like a little bit thicker of a consistency. And since it's so pigmented and it is a thicker consistency, it takes very little to cover up any sort of blemishes or anything like that that you may have. You can also just leave it like this and put a setting powder over it, or wear it dewy. I've noticed that it still wears very well. I noticed that if I just use a setting powder though, it does wear a little bit better. Or if you wear something like sheer like I did that's not really a foundation, you can also go in, and I like to use the Laura Mercier Mineral Powder Foundation on top of this concealer. So sometimes, depending on the products that I'm using, I like to conceal after my foundation, but if I'm using this as my foundation, I like to conceal before if I'm using a powder foundation. So it just kind of depends on the products that you're using. So I'm going to go ahead and just put some of this into the cap, and I'm going to take this Eco Tools retractable kabuki forehead. And over the areas where I did do the concealing, I don't rub a ton because I'm afraid that I would rub it off. I kind of stamp it in those areas. So this is what it looks like after I apply the Secret Camouflage and then the mineral powder. So if I were to apply a full-on foundation first, I would just apply this after and then apply my setting powder. And if I wanted to use a mineral sort of foundation, I would apply a base or something that would allow everything to kind of go on smoothly. So probably a BB cream or a tinted moisturizer like I did. And then I would apply my Secret Camouflage and then this over top. So as you can see from the demo, there are tons of different ways to use this. So I find that the texture of this is kind of like, almost like a thick, waxy sort of texture. And as you can see, it's very pigmented. And you gotta kind of warm it up. But then once you kind of put it into the skin, it kind of just melds into the skin. It doesn't feel tacky, but it also doesn't kind of turn into a powdery feel either. So it just kind of feels like skin once it's on there. It's got the perfect texture, I find. I do find though that since it is kind of like a harder, thicker texture and it is so pigmented, you do need to warm it up with your fingers and kind of pat it in and blend it out, especially on the under eye area. I find that maybe some of those makeup artists were talking about it not working on the under eye area because while it is very pigmented, if I wanted to get like the pigmentation of this, it probably would get kind of dry and cracky looking because this is not a super creamy formula like a lot of other under eye concealers are that are really thick. This is more of a drier sort of formula. So if you were to put a ton of this on down there, it is going to make you look older and look kind of cracky. So what I find, you know, if I kind of melt it in and I just kind of tap it in, the more tapping and blending I do, the more it just melts into the skin tone and really helps to correct under eye circles and things like that. So obviously from the demo, I used the yellow portion for any redness on my face. I use this for kind of the blue areas, like on the inner corner of my eye, just to kind of cancel that out. And then I mix them together to get my skin tone to cover any blemishes on my face. So this is pretty much all I would need when traveling because it's perfect to kind of do everything with. I think this is all encompassing. So you get quite a bit of product in this for the money. You get 5.92 grams which is 1/5 of an ounce. And just to kind of compare it, and that also included the powder in this one though. If you were to purchase the Sonia Kashuk Hidden Agenda palette, I think this is around $12.99 at Target. I could be incorrect in that. But this is 0.14 ounces or 3.9 grams. And although this is about twice the price of this doesn't include the powder or whatever. I feel like this is the better value because it's more pigmented. It's that thinner texture that looks like nothing on the skin. Although this is very convenient, these are extremely creamy. So they're going to be tacky. They're going to kind of cling to things. So with this one, since it has that really creamy tacky thing, I don't always have to set this one, but I usually do. This absolutely has to be set because it is so tacky and creamy. And this is also more likely to kind of settle into lines if you use too much of it. They both can settle into the lines, but this one I find it kind of melts into the skin better. This one kind of lays on top and it's like a thicker, creamier texture. And this I also find that although I use it on blemishes and stuff and kind of spot conceal, just because of the color range I get here, it's not ideal for blemishes just because it is kind of a greasier texture. And since the texture is kind of more creamy, and I guess the word greasy is kind of gross, but since it is sort of that sort of texture, like in the demo, I kind of went over this with this powder. This kind of has like an oily sort of feel to it, and when you go over that with a powder, a lot of powders are going to change colors in those areas, and they're going to oxidize when they've been exposed to any oils or anything. So that's why people with oily skin, generally their powders are going to oxidize if they do that. So it kind of is important to know that this one isn't going to work that well underneath of this. This works great over top of foundation to correct things, or to also be thinned out, used with a beauty blender to you know, kind of spread out and stuff. But I find that the texture of this is just the best for working with your fingers, and you don't really have to bring a whole lot of tools to work with this. I could do this completely with my fingers, or I like using like these sorts of brushes just to kind of go around edges. And this also works great if you wanted to dab it out with a beauty blender as well. I've tried it that way. But this is just great because the texture feels like skin. Powders go over it beautifully, and I don't know, it just stays put in place. So this is really great for that. So like I mentioned with creasing on the under eye area, I definitely suggest moisturizing very well before you use this, just in case it kind of gets that crepey, cracky feeling. So I use under eye moisturizer every single morning before I put on my makeup, and every single night. So that's also something, if you have a dry under eye area, this actually may catch more than like say the Sonia Kashuk, because this is a drier formula and it would be more noticeable. Also, if you have wrinkles or really, really dark under eye circles that just cannot be covered with this because you do have to thin it out quite a bit, this may not be for you, because if you have super dark under eye circles and doing a thin layer isn't going to cancel them out, if you have to thicken up the layer, in this area you're not going to have any problems, no big deal. But once you get down here, where I naturally have like this crease right here, I've had it my entire life, if you have to use a ton down there, it's going to settle into that crease and look noticeable. My eye usually isn't dark above the crease, so I kind of just avoid that crease that I have there, and I just put it down this way and then pat it out, and I don't have a problem. But that's also something to be very cautious of. Or if you're older and you have a lot of fine lines, if you put a very thin coat of this, you know, and kind of pat it in, it's not going to settle into those fine lines. It's when you get too much product that it starts to settle into the lines. What I like to do a lot of the time when I'm doing my makeup with this, I will go ahead and put this on the under eye, you know, as much as I can, or really as much as I want to cancel out what I need to cancel out. And then I'm just going to go about doing the rest of my makeup. When the rest of my makeup is done, you can kind of see whether or not it's going to settle or not, or if I got it into anything and it's settled. And then I just kind of go through with my fingers and kind of pull up any extra product or kind of pat it in more. Or I take a brush that's kind of like this, like just one of these clean sort of foundation brushes, or you know, you can even use like a clean eyeshadow brush, and it would kind of absorb that extra product that you have down there, while still keeping the initial amount on the skin. It's just going to take anything that kind of fell into any crepey areas that you may have. So if you do that and then immediately after that follow up with the under eye setting powder, I like to use the Nars translucent like crystal. I don't know what I did with it. Here it is. I really like to use this one for setting the under eye because it does not add color and it's extremely thin, so it also does not add anything else that's going to cake up under the eye. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. There may be some things that I skipped out on this or whatever, so just please be sure to leave any questions or comments below. But I absolutely love this. I think it's worth the money. I think it's around the $30-some mark, and I've been using mine for probably nearly a year at this point, and I still have a ton of product left because a little bit goes a long way. Because, I mean, you just kind of have to go into it. Since it's not creamy, you don't get a ton of product when you put your finger in it. So this is going to last me well beyond its shelf life. So it says 18 months. There's no way that I would be able to use this up in 18 months. So anyway, I hope that you found this video helpful. Again, leave questions, comments below, and I will talk to you all very soon. Bye!